India calls for efforts to combat terrorist use of internet, social media. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said terrorist groups, their ideological fellow travelers and lone wolf attackers have enhanced their capabilities by gaining access to new and emerging technologies. India on Saturday highlighted the potential for misuse of transformative technologies such as encrypted messaging and virtual currencies by non-state actors, with External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar calling for stronger global efforts to combat their use by terrorists. Jaishankar made the pitch in his keynote address at a special meeting of the UN Security Council's Counter-Terrorism Committee hosted by India. The meet focused on countering terrorist exploitation of ICT, internet and social media, threats related to new payment technologies and use of unmanned aerial systems by terrorists. Jaishankar said terrorist groups, their ideological fellow travelers and lone wolf attackers have enhanced their capabilities by gaining access to new and emerging technologies. In an apparent reference to Pakistan, he added the UN's terrorist sanctions regimes have helped put countries on notice for turning terrorism into a state-funded enterprise. The transformative technological innovations and breakthroughs of the past 2 decades, including virtual private networks, encrypted messaging services, blockchain and virtual currencies, have an array of economic and social benefits, but the flip side is their misuse by terrorists, Jaishankar said. These very technologies have also thrown up new challenges for the governments and regulatory bodies due to their potential vulnerability for misuse by non-state actors. Given the very nature of some of these technologies and the nascent regulatory environment, he said, in recent years, terrorist groups, their ideological fellow travelers, particularly in open and liberal societies, and lone wolf attackers have significantly enhanced their capabilities by gaining access to these technologies. Jaishankar said, adding terrorists use technology and the ethos of open societies to attack freedom, tolerance, and progress. Internet and social media have turned into potent instruments in the toolkit of terrorists and militant groups for spreading radicalization and conspiracy theories, Jaishankar said. Another concern for countries is the misuse of UASs by terrorist groups and organized criminal networks. Being a relatively low-cost option and with an increasing ease of accessibility, misuse of these unmanned aerial platforms for nefarious purposes by terrorist groups such as weapons and explosives delivery and targeted attacks have become an imminent danger, he said. The possibilities of using weaponized drones for terrorist purposes against strategic, infrastructure and commercial assets call for serious attention by the member states, he added. Jaishankar noted that terrorists had launched cross-border drone attacks on the UAE and Saudi Arabia, targeting civilian infrastructure, which led to loss of lives and injuries, including to Indian nationals. He also cited specific instances of terrorists using technology to target India and other countries. Our experience showed us how a benign technology of voice over Internet protocol could be used for organizing and directing such a barbaric terrorist attack from beyond our borders, he said, referring to the 2008 Mumbai attacks. More recently, terror groups have used drones and quadcopters for cross-border trafficking of drugs and arms and for carrying out attacks in the country. Such risks are not limited to India, he pointed out. Drones were used by terror groups to monitor the movement of security forces and peacekeepers in Africa. Reaffirming India's commitment to combat terrorism, Jaishankar announced a voluntary contribution of $500,000 by India to the UN Trust Fund for Counterterrorism to augment the UNOCT's efforts to build the capacity of member states to counter terrorism. This is the first time that the UN Security Council is holding a meeting in any format in India. It is only the 8th time that the CTC has held a meeting outside the UN headquarters in New York. Describing terrorism as one of the gravest threats to humanity, Jaishankar said the UN Security Council has evolved an important architecture to combat the menace that is built around the counterterrorism sanctions regime. This has been very effective in putting those countries on notice that had turned terrorism into a state-funded enterprise, he said. Despite this, the threat of terrorism is only growing and expanding, particularly in Asia and Africa, as successive reports of the 1267 Sanctions Committee monitoring reports have highlighted, he said. He added the special meeting of the CTC is being held in India because counterterrorism is one of the top priorities for the country's 2-year stint in the UN Security Council. In a message, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said new and emerging technologies have been misused by many, including malicious actors. Terrorists are abusing new and emerging technologies to spread disinformation, foment discord, recruit and radicalize, mobilize resources and execute attacks, Guterres said. The world community must adopt concrete measures to reduce vulnerabilities while protecting human rights in the digital sphere through effective multilateralism and international cooperation, he added. UK Foreign Secretary James Cleverly, while addressing the meeting, called for like-minded partners to come together to cut terrorist resources and prevent future attacks like the 2008 Mumbai attacks. Within the space of 2 decades, terrorists have gone from circulating crackly voice recordings from the depths of Tora Bora to global online recruitment and incitement campaigns to live streaming attacks. He said, "The threat from terrorism hasn't gone away. We must continue to work together and with industry and with all parts of our communities to discredit the narratives of hate, to counter radicalization, to infiltrate networks, to foil plots, and to starve terrorists of the finances and the emerging technologies that they would use to do us harm," Cleverly added. The meeting was also addressed by Foreign Minister Michael Adamo of Gabon, the current president of the Unsecurity Council, Ghana Foreign Minister Shirley Bachwi, UAE Minister of State Riyam Ebrahim Al-Hashimi, and Albania Deputy Foreign Minister Megi Fino.